Imagine waking up in a sweat, only to find your neighbor, your best friend, everyone had the same terrifying nightmare. Not just similar, but exactly the same. The same shadowy figure, the same suffocating fear, the same eerie silence that follows. What if this wasn't just coincidence? On a cold, misty evening in late October 1994, the small, tightly knit town of Millfield lay blanketed under an uneasy hush. The streets were unusually empty. The usual chatter of kids playing after school had quieted to an eerie silence. In this ordinary town, something extraordinary, or maybe unexplainable, was about to unfold. Millfield wasn't a place that saw much. No major crimes, no big scandals. Just the steady pulse of daily life. Workers turning their wrenches at the factory. Teachers chatting over coffee. Families settling into their routines. But overnight, something mysterious gripped every home. Everyone in town, it seemed, shared the exact same nightmare. The protagonist of our story, Ethan Carlson, was a middle-aged electrician with deep roots in Millfield. A man of simple habits, Ethan was usually unshakable. But when he jolted awake that night, soaked in cold sweat, he found himself gasping for air, haunted by a vision so vivid, it shook him to his core. The dream had begun in his modest kitchen, the clock on the wall frozen at 3:33 a.m., when a shadowy figure, cloaked in tattered white, silently glided through the room. Ethan felt an abyssal loneliness, a cold that felt like it came from somewhere beneath the earth itself. The figure's face was obscured, but Ethan swore he saw hollow eyes filled with silent screams. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Paralysis pinned him down as the figure's pale hand reached toward him, and then he woke. Still shaking from the nightmare, Ethan rubbed his temples and stumbled outside to breathe the cold night air. That's when he saw his neighbor, Mrs. Lindstrom, sitting on her porch steps, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. Her usually steady eyes were red-rimmed, and she whispered a single, chilling sentence. "They came to me too." In the hours that followed, more and more neighbors emerged, some clutching sheets, others sitting in stunned silence on their porches, all struck by the same dread. Whispers spread like wildfire. "The nightmare! It's everywhere!" By dawn, it was clear that this was not a coincidence. Millfield was gripped by a shared nightmare so profound that the usual boundary between self and other had vanished. Every family, every age group experienced the same haunting visitation in their sleep. Reports flooded the local police station and the community center. People described strikingly similar dreams, seeing a shadow in white, feeling a cold presence, a silence so loud it was deafening. Parents and children alike spoke of the deep despair, the feeling of being watched, of something wrong lurking just beyond the edge of perception. Ethan, racked by his own nightmare, became an unlikely investigator. Driven by a restless need to understand, he began collecting testimonies, piecing together the puzzle of a collective dream visitation no one in Millfield had ever encountered. The inciting incident was clear. What was this shadow? Why now? And what did it want from Millfield? Was it a psychological epidemic, a supernatural visitation, or something else entirely? As day bled into night again, the entire town braced itself. Sleep was no longer a refuge, but a battleground. Parents huddled with children, couples woke each other with trembling hands. Questions lingered in the heavy, silent air. Could they escape this shared nightmare? And if not, what price would the town pay? As dawn broke over Eldridge Falls, the town was visibly transformed, not by physical destruction, but by exhausted faces and haunted eyes. Sleep had become something to dread, a nightly summons to relive the same shared nightmare. More than fear gripped the town, confusion spiraled into desperation. Medical professionals descended on Eldridge Falls. Dr. Margaret Feldman, a renowned sleep psychologist, was among them. She was both curious and cautious. Mass shared nightmares on this scale are unheard of, she told a local reporter. Exhaustive interviews and sleep studies began immediately, turning makeshift clinics into overnight hubs of fear and uncertainty. The townsfolk described intricate details in their dreams, a shadowy figure that seemed almost human but moved with inhuman stillness, the creeping cold that drained warmth and joy, an oppressive silence that followed the shadow's passage. People referenced a drowned clock stuck at 3:33. Some said it was a warning, others a countdown. Yet beneath these shared details, subtle differences emerged. Some saw the figure's face twisted with pain, others with sorrow. Symbolism prickled like static: broken mirrors, extinguished candles, locked doors that no longer kept the terror out. Families spoke of atmospheres so thick with dread that it seemed to seep even into waking moments. Ethan Carlson, the electrician we met in Act 1, found himself at the center of the town's informal investigation. Overwhelmed but determined, he began collecting these puzzle pieces. Each story, each whispered fear, deepened the mystery. Ethan noticed something strange. Sets of keys found outside locked doors, shattered photographs without explanation. The nightmare, he suspected, was somehow bleeding into reality. But skepticism was never far behind. Some claimed the entire event was a mass psychogenic illness, a psychological contagion born of anxiety, fueled by the townspeople's shared expectations and fears. Dr. Feldman acknowledged this, referencing historical cases where social groups experienced collective hallucinations or symptoms without physical causes. Was this dream contagion a modern echo of those ancient phenomena? A second tension peak came when the nightmare spread beyond Eldridge Falls. Nearby towns' residents began reporting glimpses of the same chilling dream. Media frenzy exploded, experts divided between scientific inquiry and supernatural speculation. Theories flew wildly. Ancient curse, experimental weapon, collective consciousness glitch. What if our minds were all interconnected more deeply than we realize? Could a shared nightmare reveal the fragile strands of our humanity, that we are never truly alone, even in our darkest fears? For Eldridge Falls, this was no abstract question. It was a daily agony. Reports showed growing physical signs: insomnia, panic attacks, even self-imposed isolation. Families fractured under the strain of sleepless, fear-fueled nights. Children's laughter faded, replaced by whispered secrets of shadowy visitors. The heart of Eldridge Falls was breaking, piece by piece. In a curious twist, some began to experience moments of eerie calm if they acknowledged the shadow, facing the nightmare's figure, whispering their own stories aloud. But this brought unexpected consequences. Bizarre synchronicities, strange coincidences linking townsfolk's waking lives, and the eerie sensation that the nightmare was watching back. One particular case froze Ethan's blood. A local pastor, Reverend Martin, reported a visitation dream where the shadow spoke, not with words, but with feelings, offering a cryptic message: face the forgotten. The meaning was elusive, but it hinted at buried secrets hidden in Eldridge Falls history. Ethan dug into old town archives, uncovering chilling records: unreported deaths, lost children, a forgotten fire decades earlier that had swallowed part of the town and been quietly erased from memory. The nightmare, it seemed, was not just a psychological event. It was a haunting echo of real pain, trauma, and unresolved guilt woven into the town's fabric. Now the nightmare was not something to escape, but something urgent to confront. The residents of Eldridge Falls stood on the brink of revelation or ruin. The thin line between waking and dreaming blurred into oblivion. The turning point came on a chill November night, darker and colder than usual. The nightmare's grip had tightened. Sleep was a battleground. Fear was no longer passive, but an active force, shaping reality itself for Eldridge Falls. Ethan Carlson, armed with his growing collection of town histories and testimonies, convened a gathering at the old community center, now a shelter from the all-consuming dread. The crowd was raw, exhausted, yet desperate for answers. The question lingered heavily in the air. What did "face the forgotten" mean? Together with Reverend Martin, Ethan laid bare the forgotten tale beneath the town's surface, a tragedy from 70 years prior. The archives revealed a fire in 1917 that razed part of Eldridge Falls' west quarter, taking dozens of lives in silence. Records were incomplete, complaints buried, memories deliberately erased. Those lost, many believed, had been shunned by the town's reluctant conscience. Could it be that this collective nightmare was a manifestation, a psychic echo, of the town's collective guilt and unresolved grief? Was the shadow not some external force but a product of historical pain clawing back to the surface? That night, the townspeople made a pact, no longer to hide, to remember the lost, to hold vigils where silence once prevailed. They lit candles, shared stories of relatives lost to the fire, acknowledged the pain that permeated their shared past. And then, something remarkable happened. The shadow receded. Yet the mysterious presence wasn't gone. It lingered, an unsettling reminder that the line between memory and nightmare was thin. But the shared terror began to fade. Sleep reclaimed its fragile sanctuary. The aftermath of the event rippled forward in time. Eldridge Falls became a case study, a haunting example of how trauma, collective memory, and the human psyche intertwine. Psychologists studied the town, laying groundwork for understanding mass dream phenomena. Eldridge Falls' ordeal inspired books, documentaries, and heated debates about the nature of fear and memory. Years later, Eldridge Falls has healed but remains marked by its shadowed history. The nightmare visitation forced a community to face its darkest wounds. It challenges us to confront the question: what happens when collective silence about pain births something monstrous? It's a profoundly human question: how we deal with buried grief, communal guilt, and the unseen forces that haunt not just individuals, but entire communities. Are nightmares mere fiction, or are they warnings we must heed? Is shared fear a pathogen, or a bridge uniting us in empathy? Don't forget to subscribe to Real Mystery Reports for more strange, dark, and profoundly human stories. New true mysteries every day.